All right, welcome back. Well, recently, actress Cameron Diaz shared on a podcast that she and her husband, Benji Madden, sleep in separate bedrooms in order to get a better night's rest. And this practice has been coined as sleep divorce. Now, Cameron Diaz says that this has been really great for her relationship, even though it might sound like it might have the opposite effect. Michelle Esri, the owner of Fullwell Neurofeedback and Counseling in Hoover, joins us now, and we're going to talk about this. Michelle, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Claire.
All right. So first of all, just diving in, do you think sleeping in separate bedrooms? Do you think this is beneficial for a couple and for a relationship?
Do you know, it depends quite a bit on the specifics of that couple and that relationship, right? If there are some really practical reasons for it, like, hey, somebody snores really badly and nothing is helping it, and so nobody's sleeping, maybe that's a really practical reason to think about sleeping in separate bedrooms. There aren't a ton of other practical reasons for it, though, right? There is something about the intimacy of sharing space with another person, including that. We are, I think I've said this when talking with you before, we have social nervous systems, right? We have a nervous system that when we interact with other people, it helps us to feel safe. It helps us to feel secure. It helps us to feel attached and connected. And so sleeping next to a person is one of the safest, most trusting things you can do, right? You're in a completely vulnerable position. And so it builds this experience of safety and trust. And even in an unconscious level, it builds that with another person. And so if you're taking that away, it can have some detrimental effects if you're not careful about connecting in other ways.
Well, and you mentioned that this can clearly affect a relationship. A person's sleep would also, as you mentioned, would have to benefit into a decision. But when should couples bring this up as a possibility? Is it what you sort of mentioned at the beginning about maybe possibly snoring, not sleeping well?
You know, again, every couple is going to have their different reasons for bringing this up. I think some people may have a background of having negative experiences, and that kind of being that close in that kind of setting might make them feel unsafe. And so that's something to consider. Sleep would be another reason, right? Like, is there a really valid reason? Maybe it's not snoring, maybe it's another medical condition or a machine that somebody's using or somebody who has to have a special kind of bed. Like, there are some very valid reasons for people to sleep separately. I think some considerations when talking about it, though, are is this simply because you're trying to create space between you and the other person? And if that's true, there are some more questions to ask about the state of relationship, right? If I am feeling the need to have a separation from this person, what are some of the reasons for that? Are there real things happening that are creating that need for separation? Or is it a way for me to push back and to protect myself because there's some things in the relationship that need to be addressed?
Yeah, that's a good point too. That it may not just be about sleeping. Somebody may be wanting to do this
Yeah.
for space for for whatever reason for that space. I think we touched on some of this last week, but if a couple is considering this, what can they do to make sure it doesn't really impact their relationship negatively?
That is an excellent question because, you know, like I said, sometimes it is practical and sometimes it is, you know, a consideration to be made. One of the things that you can do is to make sure that you're intentionally connecting in other ways, right? You know, I said at the beginning of this conversation, that social nervous system, that connectedness, that feeling connected and vulnerable with another person, this isn't the only way you can achieve that, right? You can spend time with your spouse in other ways that connect and build that vulnerability. You can sit next to each other up until the point you go to bed and still have some of that same connectedness and vulnerability. So it isn't the only way that you can connect vulnerably with your spouse. And so, if you are unable to sleep in the same bed, or if you make the decision to sleep separately, just being really intentional to build those other opportunities for that same kind of connection.
At the beginning, we said Cameron Diaz said that this really helped her relationship. In your opinion, generally speaking, could this be something that does help your relationship and benefit it?
And again, that's going to be a couple by couple thing, but it could be, right? Like if there is a really valid reason for people to sleep separately, then it can be really beneficial. Some people have a need for a little more independence from their spouse. Maybe they are finding themselves really connected in a way that feels codependent, that they feel like they can't do anything without them. Maybe something like this could be a benefit to that. There's actually a whole lot of opinions on this, so I'm not going to speak to every single opinion, but I will say um, there are places and in certain couples where this could be beneficial, and that's going to be determined by the couple. The thing to consider again, though, is it creating a divide between you and your spouse or you and your partner? Is it creating an emotional or physical divide? And if it is, um, you just need to be aware of that as you're making that choice. Is that something that you are intentionally doing, or is that something that is creating more of a rift than you intend? That's going to, it can naturally kind of cause people to drift apart if they are not being intentional in other ways.
Lots to think about there. Michelle, we appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Claire.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.